In this video, we're going to look at how to add records manually to your EndNote library. The majority of the records in your library will end up being added automatically from the library search feature or from journal databases. However, many sources can't be added automatically. For example, web pages or chapters in edited books or conference papers, basically anything that isn't a basic book or journal article. So you need to know how to do this manually. So in this video, I'm just going to manually enter a record for each of these three sources. But the principles within this will work for any reference. Now, with any reference management system, you do need to know how to reference something manually before you know what information to include when you're adding a reference. If you're at all unsure what you might need if you're referencing something fairly obscure, check the Referencing Your Work Skills Guide, because there's help with referencing all sorts of different resources in the referencing guidelines. I'll start by adding a reference to a website. So I'm going to start in the empty EndNote library created in the first video. To create a record manually for a reference, you need to go to the New Reference button. You can also use the References ribbon and choose the top option, which, as you can see here, is also Ctrl-N on your keyboard. That will open an empty record. The default reference type is a journal article, so the first thing you need to do is change that. And I'm going to select, in this case, a web page. You can see that when I've selected that, the fields that I have to fill in have changed. The web page that I'm going to be referencing is this one. It's a slideshow with numerous examples of digital photo tampering throughout history. There is no obvious author for the site, so I'm going to use Scientific American as the author, as this is their website. There's also no obvious date at this top part of it, but if I scroll down to the bottom, there is a copyright date, so I'm going to use that. I'll switch back to EndNote. So my author was Scientific American. And I have to put a comma at the end of the name because this is not a normal person's name. If I just left it as Scientific American, it would think that this was somebody called American whose first name was Scientific. So by putting the comma at the end, I'm telling it that everything before the comma wants to be in my in-text citation. And the year I'm putting is 2020. The title I can just go and select from the website. And copy that. Back to EndNote and paste that in. Now the whole style, and here I'm using the Harvard Whole Referencing System, uses sentence case for its titles. So I'm going to just select over that again and use the button here to change the case to sentence case. The access date is today, and I've recorded this on the 1st of October. I don't need a short title, I don't need notes, I don't need research notes. The only other thing I need is the URL. So again, I can just go back to the website and select that. Pop back to EndNote and paste it in. That record is now complete, so I can close this window. It's very important that I close it using the small x here and not the larger one above. So the small one there. That has saved the reference, and you can see it's appeared in that central section. Over on the left-hand side, it's saying I now have one reference in my library, it's been recently added and it's currently unfiled. Now I'm going to add a reference for a chapter in an edited book. For this example, I'm actually going to do a chapter in an ebook. We're all using a lot more of these at the moment. The ebook I'm going to be looking at is this one here, which is on Sage Research Methods. Most of the information I need to complete this is at the top of this page. I've got the chapter title, the book title, the author of the chapter, the editors, and the year it was published. As well as that, if I click on the Cite button over here, it shows me the information about the publisher and the page range. Notice there is an option to export this to EndNote. However, I've tried this several times from Sage Research Methods and it never seems to get it right, so it's best to do this manually. So I'm going to switch to EndNote and create a new reference. So the first thing I need to do is change it to be the appropriate reference type. So I'm looking for an electronic book section. Note, if you had the paper copy, there is the book section here. And I can then start putting the information in. The author's name was John Wagner, but I'm not typing that in exactly as it was. I'm going to put in the surname first, then a comma, and then the name. It doesn't matter if your referencing system only uses initials, EndNote will take care of that. The year was 2011. For the title, I'm going to go and copy that from the ebook. And again, I can see that needs changing to be in sentence case. The editors need entering in exactly the same way as I did the author, so surname first. So I need Margolis, Eric, and Luke Powells. Sometimes though, if the spellings are awkward, it can be easier to just copy them and change it once you're in EndNote. I'm going to switch to put the surname first. I don't need the and. EndNote will add that for me. If you've got two authors or two editors, they just go on their line by themselves. And I'll switch that around as well. So I've got Margolis, I think I've got an extra space there, yeah. Margolis Eric and Powells Luke. The book title, I'll again just copy. This should also be in sentence case, but Sage is always written in full capitals. So I'm just going to select the second half and change that. For the place published, I'm going to look over in the site information. So it's London and Sage Publications. London. Notice I didn't add the extra colon. Again, EndNote will do that for me in my document. Now the only other thing I need is the page range of the chapter. And again, that was given over in the citation information. So it's 72 to 96. Now the whole styles don't need the DOI number, but it does no harm to add it if you've got it, in case you ever want to use this with a different referencing system. So I'm just going to pop that in. It won't appear in the reference in my document when I'm using Harvard Hull. So that's everything completed. I can go and close the record. And there we can see it in the All References group. And finally, we'll look at adding a reference for a conference paper. Adding a conference paper can be tricky, as they don't always give you the information that you need for the reference. I've got an example of one here. So this is a PDF. I can see at the top the name of the conference, and that gives me the year. And I've got information about the conference presentation and the two authors. What it doesn't give me anywhere is where or when the conference was, which I need for the reference. So I need to do a little bit of research to find out where this was. So I'm going to select the title of the conference and copy it and switch to Google. Paste that in. If I click on the top link here, it tells me that it took place in Limerick from July the 10th to July the 13th that year. So I've now got all of the information I need to complete the reference. Again, if you're not sure what information you do need, check out the appropriate referencing style guidelines on the Referencing Your Work Skills Guide. So back in EndNote, I'm ready to create my new reference and switch to the conference paper option. Notice there is also conference proceedings. These are for if you're referring to the conference as a whole and the publication that came out from that as a whole. An individual paper, you would use the conference paper. So I'm going to copy the author names from the paper because they were quite difficult to spell. I think I'll manage the vim bit, so I'll just do the surname. Switch back and copy the other one. Paste that in and add the first name. The year, I remember, was 2005. The title I'll get from the paper. Now I can see here that it's included the line break when I've pasted that in. So I'm just going to go to the beginning of the second line and use the backspace and pop space in there to make sure that's all on one line. Again, it needs to be in sentence case, so I'm just selecting it and making that change. I don't need an editor, but I do need the conference name. The conference location was Limerick, and the date of the conference was the 10th to the 13th of July 2005. Now, if I did have the place published, I could put that in, as with the publisher, but there was nothing on this document and it's not essential. It's quite rare to have them for individual papers. I need to give the page range, so I'll just check that back on the document. So the first page is 288, the last page is 299. So 288 to 299. And that is everything that I need for this. So I can close the reference. And we can see it there in the library. If you wish, you can check what it looks like on the preview, which is absolutely fine. So the general rule is to check what information is needed in a particular reference type, and then fill in as much information as you have got. You may need to do a little bit of research to find out the odd piece of information, but usually as much information as you have is sufficient, as long as it's enough for a reader to be able to locate the resource.